What's up, Momos? Welcome back to my channel. It's been a while.
Hey everybody, glad to be back on the Momo Morgan Ollie vlog channel.
Don't worry, I'll make sure Luca makes his debut in this video at some point.
Nice.
But first, we need a chit chat. Today's video is called My Birth Story, the worst and best day of my life.
Very good. It's an appropriate title for show. I think that would, if I was titling it for myself, that might be it too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was both of our worst and best days ever, which is a very strange thing.
Dichotomy.
Yes, and it's just like, how do you process this? So it's gonna be interesting. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe. All right, where to begin? Honestly, I should have written an outline for this because it's so much. We're 5 weeks into this and I'm in survival mode. He's in survival mode. So the fact that I'm sitting down and making this, I'm impressed with myself.
Way to go, baby.
Thank you. Luca's currently taking a little nappy poo. So not in his crib, obviously, because we're in here. Well, as you guys know, I had planned to have a home birth and had been planning on that and dreaming of that and praying for that for really years now. But especially the past 9-10 months, whatever.
Morgan, would you say, let's just be real, and I'm not saying this is like a bad thing, it's not, but would you say that on top of you just desiring a home birth and just that being your deepest desire for how this would go, was there a little bit of because I think this was the case for me, was there a little bit of a sense of like pride of like, we're having a home birth? Like, we're going against the grain and doing something natural that we think more people should be doing, and we're doing it. Like, that really was. That's just the reality for me a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting that you had that.
Like a little. I'm not saying like a huge deal, but...
No, I would say, yeah, there definitely was this, like, pride of, like, oh, man, I'm about to just, like, beast mode this naturally, push out a baby, and like the women did back in Bible times, like, I'm about to crush this. And yeah, kind of like, this is the way it always should have been, like, you know, whatever. Yes, definitely that was there, if we're being honest. I don't think that it was like a deep pride that was like, so like, oh, you need to take that to the Lord. Because I do think that...
You had your reasons.
Yeah, I had my reasons. And also, like, throughout the whole pregnancy, I really did have to continuously, like, just give it back to God. Give the whole birth situation back to God. Because, like, at the beginning, like, at 20 weeks, finding out I had a low-lying placenta. And that being a possibility of putting me in the hospital to deliver Luca. So, like, dealing with that for weeks and weeks, really... was something that I had to be like, okay, Lord, whatever you want, however he comes, like, it doesn't matter as long as he comes and is safe and healthy and I'm safe and healthy. Had no idea that prayer would lead to such interesting, intense thing that it did lead to.
You pray those prayers really hoping that it doesn't come to pass.
Right, being like, God, like, that's not gonna happen. Yeah, so if you guys haven't watched our birth vlog, go watch that because you'll get a lot of detail. But this is kind of like a follow-up to that video and just giving some more detail and just like our personal thoughts. In our vlog, you see my water break and all that jazz, and nothing happens for the first 24 hours. Paul and I both thought, and my mom, like, we all were like, oh, my water broke, I'm going into labor, we're gonna have this baby in the morning. Like, that happened Sunday night. So that did not happen. And 24 hours later, I was going to take castor oil because my water because I just still really had not had very many contractions all of Monday. And
we get it. Many of you guys hate castor oil. We get it, okay?
Yeah, but let's just be clear, like, literally millions of women take castor oil. I know one mom who had 11 children took castor oil with every single one of her kids.
Can we not get into that big debate now?
Yeah, we're not gonna. This is just how it happened, and I don't need people being like, if you hadn't done that, you would have been. No, just stop it. That's not what this video is.
We love you guys. We still love you if you hate castor oil.
Yes. So took castor oil, and about an hour later, I was throwing up insanely. You see that in the vlog. So we go to bed that night, and I start having contractions all night long. I also had diarrhea all night long, so I think I maybe got like an hour of sleep that whole night. Like, it was rough.
Which you had been having diarrhea for a while, even before the castor oil.
Yeah, for a whole week and a half, basically. But this was worse. The castor oil made it worse for sure, and made my contractions start up. And so Tuesday morning, midwife shows up, still not having like incredibly consistent contractions, but they're happening more. So we do a few other things to get contractions going. They start picking up. You guys see in the birth vlog that I like get to a point where like we're all thinking like, okay, I am like gonna have this baby here. I hop into the water, the birthing pool.
Yeah, we were all thinking like next couple hours you're gonna be lying in the birthing pool with a baby.
Yeah. And I was feeling good. I was like, tired. I had been having pretty intense contractions for several hours now at this point. And again, like had only an hour, 2 hours of sleep that night. And so this was at like 4 or 5 o'clock at night at this point. And I get into the birth pool, and I think I was in there for about 30 minutes, and my midwife feels my head, and then she checks my temperature, and she's like, oh boy. And I'm like, what? And she's like, you have a fever.
When she took the temperature thing out and looked at it, like, I guess it's just my ignorance, but I didn't even, like, I had no clue about that stuff. I didn't think that was something that even could happen.
Yeah.
And so she's checking temperature. I'm like, what's she even doing? And then suddenly she's like, this is looking like it might be an issue. And I'm like, wait, what?
And what's interesting is we had a conversation on Monday with my midwife, and she had suggested that I start taking antibiotics because my water had broken and I still wasn't in labor at that point. And it's weird, like I've talked about this with my mom. I really very vaguely remember that conversation, and I remember being very confused in that conversation. I didn't know what she was telling me I needed to take antibiotics for. I didn't know she was saying like, which I mean she didn't verbally say this, but what she meant was, we're doing this as a precaution to help like you not get an infection, to help you not get a fever. I didn't know that at all.
So it was already on her radar,
and
it just didn't compute or resonate. So then it's just like, wait, you just checked her temperature and she's got a fever, and probably because of an infection, and we're just like, wait, what? But it kind of makes sense. The water breaks early. It's been X amount of time.
Yeah. So I had said no to taking the antibiotics because I thought she was talking about something totally different.
So if you had been taking antibiotics, it may have
kept me from getting a fever, which is like insane. Which, a lot of other things happen. But like, it could have prevented me from getting an infection at all and being able to have home birth. I don't know. But it's just, so that's like super.
Dang, that's crazy.
I know.
I wish that, that would have just been like.
Really clear of like, you need to take these antibiotics because it will hopefully keep you from getting an infection. So I wish that had been made much, much more clear to me. And to Paul and to all of us, but it was a very short conversation, and I was kind of like confused, and so I was like, no, I think I'm good, like I feel fine. She was like, okay, and then we just moved on. Before we go any further, I just want to say on our other video, there's a lot of experts saying you should have done this,
so many experts,
you shouldn't have taken that, your midwife should have done this, blah 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 blah. And in my comment section, I'm just gonna ignore those comments because you may
or may not have a point. You may actually know a lot, there's a lot of experts that say they know a lot, that don't, that are very opinionated. This is not the video for that.
It's not beneficial to my healing either to like be like, oh man, if only I'd done that, like whatever. Moving on, we found out I had a fever and we were kind of like, okay, well, what does this mean? And my midwife was like, it's one of two things, dehydration or you have an infection. She said if it's dehydration, we'll be able to tell within 30 minutes to an hour once we get fluids in you, and it should immediately start going down. So I started drinking a ton of fluids, and 30 minutes later she checked my temperature and it had not gone down. I believe it went up even a little more, and she was like, this is not dehydration. She's like, also your heart rate and the baby's heart rate is going up. She was like, it's not like in a dangerous place, but it is going up, which is a sign of infection. And so I'm hearing that, and honestly I'm just like, okay, so now what? Like, that's really what the only thing that was going through my head was like, okay, what do I need to do then? Like, that was it. Basically, after deciding that it was not dehydration and it was an infection, my midwife had said that she had some antibiotics that she could run through an IV system here, but she was like, but I really encourage, like, we need to go to the hospital. And she was like, when we get to the hospital, you can still labor naturally. They're just gonna put an IV in you and run antibiotics in you so that get this infection out. And they'll, monitor a baby and you and whatever. But you can still deliver vaginally. I was just like, okay, fine, let's go. I, the night before, had said a prayer to the Lord where I was like nervous because the contractions that I was having were pretty consistent, and then all of a sudden they stopped and I didn't feel Luca moving around, and it made me really nervous. And I went into the bathroom and was like, just kind of started to tear up and was like, Lord, like, please, I don't care how he comes out, like, just keep him safe, keep me safe, get him out. Like, I give this to you. I don't care what I have to do. I will do whatever it takes to keep him safe and get him out. I don't care what it looks like. And like, after I said that prayer, I just felt peace, and I actually felt Luca move around probably a few minutes later. And it was just like, oh, it's gonna be okay.
So maybe that was like a spiritual, Holy Spirit moment of preparation.
I think it definitely was, because after that, I had peace that surpassed all understanding throughout the entire time. Like, we got into the car and I teared up thinking about, like, it just like all was like a really like fast forward movie of like how I thought my birth was gonna go, and that wasn't gonna happen, and it was like all running through my head really fast, and I just like started tearing up and cried for a minute as we were like backing up to head to the hospital. And Paul was like, it's okay, babe, you can cry, like, let it out. And I was just like,
that was difficult.
Yeah.
It was just very emotional, but it was like, you can't allow the emotions to really come out, because like, we got a baby to deliver. It's a time sensitive thing, and deep down it's like, so, and you're right, like, ultimately, God, just let's get this baby out safe. Yeah, it's just very emotional. It's like everything that you had planned, the way you envisioned it, is now, we're literally in the car heading to the hospital. So it was like, man, emotional for a number of reasons.
As we were driving to the hospital, I mean, I think I cried for like, I don't even know, 2 minutes. It wasn't very long.
Right, yeah.
And we got to the hospital, and Paul dropped me and my mom off, and we went up there, and my midwife and her assistant came with us as well. And then eventually Caroline, my BFF, came as well, but she actually stayed back at the house and like cleaned everything up and was amazing. Shout out to Carl, you freaking rock. Yeah, she was amazing. I was having contractions during most all of this. They kind of settled down a little, I think, just because of the stress that like my body was feeling of like having to transition from home to hospital. But pretty quickly they came back on, and for like an hour, I think, I just like had contractions on my own, but then the head midwife came in and was like, we're gonna put you on Pitocin because we need to get things going. And I was terrified because I had heard nightmare stories about Pitocin and contractions and how intense and painful they make contractions. I was so nervous.
That was, yeah, you were pretty out of it at that point when I kind of got it explained to me about Pitocin and how it was just, the midwife was like, it's gonna be more painful than contractions on their own. And just like, oh, I don't want Morgan to have to go through that, especially this late into the game when you are so tired.
So tired.
It's been such like a lengthy process already.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh God, please just come through. I know she can do it, but
yeah, I remember telling my midwife like that I was scared, and she was like, look, you've never given birth, you don't really know what the, you know, intense contractions feel like anyways, so just accept that this is how they feel and breathe through them and you're gonna be okay. And so that's what I did for 7+ hours, and it was seriously like the hardest thing of my entire life that I've ever done. It was so like from the top of my head down to my toes. Like I can't really explain what the pain felt like anymore. Like I can kind of remember it, but can't really. It's very strange. I just remember I can remember that it was the worst pain of my life and that it took everything in me to breathe through those contractions.
babe, it was so, it's even hard to like articulate, I guess, unless you've been a husband in this situation, but it was just so excruciating to watch you go through this such a long period of pain and not be able to do anything.
Yeah.
And then the thought of like, and I don't even know if this is working.
Right. It's interesting because I remember thinking to myself that I went into myself and I thought like I have to like kind of disappear from the world right now because I'm not going to be able to push this baby out if I don't like go into myself. Like I was using so much energy. I was so exhausted, and I was like, they will not put a suction on my baby's head and yank him out of me. I will push him out on my own. And so I like disappeared again. Like I thought I was in labor land here. No, I disappeared. Like
You did.
oh my goodness, I was just gone. Like a little robot zombie thing. I don't
Weird.
even know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like I barely talked. Like really all I did was like grunt. Okay, you want to go grab him and we can just hold him up here?
Yeah.
Baby, why are you crying?
We're back.
We're back.
We're back, and we brought a friend,
We brought the little baby.
Luca Grace.
He is losing his hair. None of you guys better make fun of it.
What about the hat?
He had a hat on, but he's hot, so he didn't want it on.
Don't you dare make fun of his
To make fun of his receding hairline.
his extremely receding hairline. You know, the big kind of climactic moment. Yeah, it felt kind of like it was like one thing didn't go as planned, and then something even bigger didn't go as planned. And suddenly, the nurse comes in and says, in 45 minutes, it's going to be 3 a.m. and the head doctor,
Midwife, the head midwife.
Dr. Midwife that worked at the hospital is going to assess if you're dilated enough to have a vaginal birth or if you're going to need a C-section. And so that was, again, like, just for two people that Morgan purposefully avoided that section in her book.
In all my books that I read.
My mind, like, it's just not going to happen yet. We're doing a home birth, no C-section. And suddenly that's like a very realistic possibility. And I was like, oof. Oh man, Lord, please, like when the main doctor comes in, please let Morgan be dilated to the point where she can, it's kind of like, Lord, at least give us this.
Yeah, at least let me have a vaginal birth at the hospital. I, again, was so out of it. I remember her coming in and checking me, and I was having contractions while this was happening, so it was very painful. And she like checked me and was like, yeah, sweetie, you haven't dilated at all in the past 7.5 hours.
It was horrible.
And like everything in me was just, I was done. Like I could not fight anymore. Like I had fought so hard, and to hear that like literally all of what I just did was for nothing was so defeating, and just like, whoa. I don't even know, like, I don't have a lot of words for it. Just defeating and just heartbreaking, and just like, I just went through 8 hours of intense pain for nothing. Are you kidding me?
Which, you know, you want to be careful saying like it all happened for nothing.
Right.
It's obvious God can work.
Right. And
Truly, I'm not just saying that to sound cheesy. Like,
yeah.
God works in our trials. Consider it pure joy whenever you face many trials of different kinds.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, as crappy as it was.
Yeah, and like looking back on it, it wasn't for nothing, and I think it's just made me a stronger woman. Having to have going through that, like it wasn't for nothing, and the Lord makes all things good for those who love Him. And so, like, it wasn't for nothing, but it very much felt like that in the moment was just like, are you kidding me?
I believe that.
And so she said, you know, it's time for a C-section. She was like, I believe that it's time for a C-section. She was like, if you want, we could go 2 more hours of putting you on the highest dose of Pitocin that we can, and you can labor for 2 more hours, and then we can check you again. And if you haven't, you know, dilated then it would definitely be time. And I think like Paul,
I think we were all
Paul looked at me.
Well, we were we were just pretty much anyone that was in the room could see
I could not fight anymore. Everyone knew it. Like, I think everyone saw it in me, just like it just leave me.
We're not gonna be in a better spot in 2 hours.
Yeah. And so Paul looked at me and was like, this is what we gotta do. And I was like, yes. They were like, all right, we're gonna get you in. We're gonna take you off Pitocin right now. And I think it was like 2 hours later. I don't know how long
Hospitals
it was.
move at their own pace, and that pace,
2 hours later.
that pace is very slow.
Yeah, so they were like, we're gonna get you in right away. No, it was 2 hours later. 5 a.m. is when they got me in.
Unless it's like an intense emergency, they are going to be moving at their own. And granted, you guys, it was a good hospital experience overall. When it's all said and done, like, we did feel respected, treated well. Shout out to the hospital staff.
The nurses were awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, but nevertheless, they were moving it there.
So slow. So for 2 more hours after that, they took me off of Pitocin, but I was still having very intense contractions. They wheeled me off back to have the C-section, and getting the epidural was absolutely terrible.
Things are about to get real, you guys. Like, these are the type of moments that truly, like, alter your life. They confirm Morgan needs a C-section, and then they come in and they wheel her out. And so we're just watching her get wheeled out. She's just been this fighter that's like kind of completely depleted. And now she's going to get a C-section. And we're just watching her helplessly getting rolled out. Her mom starts crying. I'm just like, what is happening? They told me that I could go back with you in a little while, like once the surgery starts. And so your mom, I, midwife, Caroline are just sitting there looking at each other like...
Terrible.
Man, God, like, really? Seriously, God, and this is my thought, you couldn't have intervened a little bit and just caused this to be a little more smooth.
Yeah.
So anyway.
But man, once it hit, woo, I was feeling good.
Alright, there you go.
I mean, I was just praying like, God, please take this pain away. Please take this pain away. I'm dying. Like, I'm dying. I can't do this. And then it was gone.
You see why...
Yeah, I see why women get the epidural.
Delivering mothers just say, shoot me up.
Literally.
Take away this pain.
Yeah, it all makes sense now. But no, I mean, I got a bit of a different epidural because I did the C-section, but anywho, they lay me down and they hook me up to all kinds of things.
And real quick, not saying we're advocates for that. We just are more understanding where women, you know, just give me all the, so I don't have to feel this or feel the pain.
Yeah.
You know, that's a whole other conversation, and one that we maybe will have again in the future, but
yep.
Nevertheless.
I don't really remember them starting surgery or anything. I was fully out of it. I had my phone next to me. The midwife told me I could bring my phone in and she would play music for me. So I had my birth playlist playing. It was like all these worship songs. And I was just kind of like singing along to them as I was like laying there. And then out of nowhere, Paul shows up. Like, it was like, poof, he's there. And he would tell me kind of what was going through your mind when you walked into the OR room and stuff.
So I go in and get placed down by Morgan's head, and then about, you know, your waist or a little above your waist is like the curtain, and then they're all working on you on the other side. And it got so emotional so quickly. And it was like an emotion, a level of emotion and a type of emotion that I'd never experienced. A level of pain and a level of like tragedy. Like, this could be just a very real possibility. And I'll explain why I'm saying that. A very real possibility that this could go south. And it was just like, almost, you can't even describe it unless you've experienced it, which some of you I'm sure have. I'm sure some of you have experienced the most intense, horrible side of that, which is it ends in loss. But I'm kind of sitting there, kneeling over Morgan, and her playlist is on. And I've said this before, I feel like, but she had to pick a playlist of the most emotional, like, kind of slow piano, sad, I'm just going to call them sad songs.
They're not sad, but in that moment they were very sad. And you knew what was going on.
So it was already just emotional, just knowing that they're cutting on her. You know, they're giving her a C-section, which is a pretty intense. I know it's common, but it's still intense. And so I'm sitting there, playlist. Morgan is singing along to her playlist, but you can tell she's pretty out of it. She's very out of it, but she's still kind of mouthing the words to, I will trust my Savior Jesus. And then the next song, you know, all those songs that are just beautiful and sad and in the situation. Yeah. And then I kind of hear the tone of the nurses and doctors. It's like becomes a little more frantic, if you will.
Before or after he was born?
This was before Luca, yeah.
Oh, really? And
they start moving around more quickly. Well, okay, I it's hard to remember exactly.
I think they brought him, got him out and like lowered the curtain and showed us, and we were both like, and I was like, and like.
I feel like I could be wrong, but I feel like I had heard that there were some complications happening before he came out, but I could be wrong. It may have been like they lift him out, but I just remember not being emotionally in a place where I could celebrate him coming out. So that makes me think that I had realized something wasn't totally right before he came out. Ultimately, my midwife turns to me and she says something along the lines of Morgan's hemorrhaging and she's bleeding, and they're trying to stop the bleeding. And so I'm just like, wait, what? And so my mind is completely focused on Morgan at that point. Sorry, Luca, but Morgan took priority. And so then Luca comes out, and of course I'm so excited, but it's like, what is happening to my wife? And then my midwife turns to me and says, Paul, now would be a good time to pray. And so at that point, I just kind of lost it. One, because it's like the reality of, could my wife die from blood loss that they're not able to stop the bleeding? And then also the intensity of, I've been praying. I've prayed multiple times, some of the most intense prayers in my life. Lord, help intervene. And it's like he didn't answer, or he didn't come through. Lord, intervene so that we can have a home birth. Like, don't let Morgan still have a fever. Oh, turns out she still has a fever. We're packing up and going to the hospital. Lord, please intervene so that she can have a vaginal birth. They wheel her back for a C-section. So I'm just like, the Lord's not answering me. He's not answering my prayers. And so I'm supposed to now pray the biggest one that they stop her bleeding, and I'm already just getting super choked up. You can see it a little bit in the vlog. And I turn, back to Morgan, and I'm sitting there kind of trying to get my wits, and then the next song comes on, and it's the song, so it's actually a secular song, but it has to do with like having a baby. It's
the Ellie
Goulding,
How Long Will I Love You?
Yeah, and it's like, how long will I love you, and when the sky is above you. And I'm sitting there, and literally in my mind I'm like, this is a movie. And this song comes on that is the song they would play in the movie where
the person dies,
where the spouse dies.
Oh man.
And in my mind I'm like, God, this is so cruel. It was almost like it was the part in the movie though where it's like kind of beautiful, because there is just a beauty of like, I don't know, in some cruel way there's beauty in tragedy almost.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking to myself, they're gonna deliver this baby, or they had delivered the baby at that point, so I'm like, there's beauty of new life, and now my wife is gonna get taken away, and this stupid song is on in the background, the most sad playlist.
Yeah, well, I heard the midwife say like, now would be a good time to say a prayer, Paul, and I didn't really understand why she was saying that. And then Paul like leaned over me and like started praying and was crying, and I remember him saying like, Lord, like the woman in the Bible who was bleeding and touched Jesus and you stopped her bleeding, like, would you do that for Morgan? And I remember hearing like one of the doctors yell something like, where's the blood? We need more blood. And I just closed my eyes, and I just remember thinking to God, I was like, God, are you taking me right now? And I just remember like having this moment of like, okay, God, you're gonna take me, and like Paul's gonna raise Luca. It's just, man, woo, intense. And I just remember like, even in that moment though, like being at peace, but feeling like really sad for Paul that he was gonna be like a widowed guy. And I just like remember thinking, well, my mom can help him, and like he'll be okay. And just like, I think I started singing this. I think the next song that came on was Give Me Jesus or something, because I remember singing to that. And
another tragic one.
yeah, I just started singing Give Me Jesus.
So like slow and sad, like beautiful. It's like a beautiful sad, but it's still not the song for the moment, dude.
Oh, babe. Oh man, but the next thing you know, they got my bleeding stopped. And I don't really remember them like rolling me out or anything. Like, what happened? Because I don't remember getting to the recovery room. Like, where did you go?
Just like out the doors, and then was because they said there's so much.
Yeah.
Because then it's like they're saying, Paul, like, hold your son. Paul, go be with your son. And I'm like, my wife, Yeah. But then they tell me they got the bleeding under control. So I go back with Luca, and I come back out and go into kind of like a side room that's close by. They wheel you into that side room, and this is kind of the waiting before you go back to be with family. And while you were there, you started getting really cold. You started shaking, like it was very intense again, because it was like, okay, something else is wrong. And that's when the doctors like started scrambling and going and getting other doctors to like come, and they were like putting blankets on you. And
I don't really remember that.
it was not pretty, because then I was just like losing it. Like, I can't continue to be like, okay, now they got it under control. Oh, now it's going south again. So I was just like a mess. And then they brought Luca out kind of during like around that time. And was feeling so unsettled, like whatever you call it, queasy.
Nauseous.
Yeah, that I couldn't hold our newborn son. Morgan was too fragile to hold our newborn son, so they had to send him back to the back room.
Sad to think about, but he was cared for.
Which is something initially it was like so important for us that right when Luke was born, we wanted to go skin to skin with Morgan. We didn't want him taking him to the back. Like that was just a thing for us. Was like we just want our boy to be with us. We don't want him going back to the back room with strangers and other babies.
Right.
But of course, all of our plans are upended.
Everything, literally everything. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And then I do remember kind of coming out of that shakiness, and like the anesthesiologist came out and gave me more pain medication, and that was kind of what settled me down. And it was like an hour and a half before I was able to hold Luca. They finally brought him back out, and that was when I finally got to hold him and meet him for the first time.
And you can actually see that in the vlog.
Yeah.
When you're holding him.
Yeah. I was still so out of it and like so swollen and just like but man, I remember it very clearly though, like them handing me Luca and me seeing him for the first time and just thinking, wow, this is it.
And yeah, we had, because I kind of was posting little updates on Instagram and just knowing like how many people were praying for us. And then it was like the next day or the day after when you were still in the hospital, and I started kind of running some errands and ran into our good friends from church, and he had said like, I woke up in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. and was praying for you guys. And then I heard that like from someone else, like, I woke up in the middle of the night and was praying for you guys. And that was like when the most intense moments of it were happening. Yeah. And so many people on Instagram were messaging us, and that really was encouraging.
Yeah, it's like interesting how in the moment, you're like thinking, God, you are not answering any of my prayers. Why would I even pray another prayer? Like nothing's coming to fruition. This is all just continuing to get worse and worse. But
maybe if I don't pray, it'll get better.
Yeah. Oh man. But looking back, it's like I personally can see that God was very much in it, and just in the sense that he gave me peace that surpassed all understanding, in the sense that every nurse that we had was so kind, never once made me feel like, I was scared of going to a hospital because I was afraid that certain things that I would ask for or request, that like I would be hardcore judged, or a nurse would be like, oh no, we're not doing that, or like whatever, I just want to be heard. And that just was not the case. Like they all were so kind and listened to me, the doctors, like, and as much as they could, they followed through with my request. I had asked for skin to skin, and they brought them right out to me after they had delayed the clamp umbilical cord for as long as they could, which is something that I had asked for. They brought them right out to me, which I was not able to hold them, which was really sad. So yeah, just seeing little things here and there of how the Lord worked. It's like he very much was there, and granted he wasn't answering our prayers how we were praying or asking him to do, but he was moving for sure. And I mean, I don't fully understand. I don't know if I ever will understand why we had to go through such an intense thing, but I do know that in us just sharing our experience, like how many of you guys have reached out and been like, I felt so seen by watching your all's vlog. Like I went through something very similar to that, and like this was amazing to watch. It was very healing for me to watch this, like all kinds of things like that you guys have sent us, which has just been amazing, incredible. And I think it's so cool that as believers, like the Lord uses our trials that we go through in this life, that we're gonna go through no matter what, like no matter how strong of a believer we are, we're gonna go through awful things, but they can be used for good, and that's really cool. But it also was worth it because we got this little man at the end of it all.
Hey, Baldy. You are so cute.
He's amazing.
And I think the biggest spiritual thing that I took away, it was maybe 2 days later, a day or two later, I was running some errands and I was able to get some time to really pray and decompress for the first time, outside of just maybe shorter prayers. I was just kind of like, being very raw with the Lord of like what just all happened, my prayers that didn't seem to get answered. It was just so emotional. Lord, like, what is all this? I don't feel like you heard me. I don't feel like you answered me. So I was kind of rending my heart before the Lord. And after several minutes of prayer in that place, I felt like the Lord, I think I may have been reading some in scripture as well. And I was like, wow, I feel more convinced. And it's almost just like a supernatural thing that's hard to even explain. But I feel more convinced and convicted that I'm on the right path, and that I love the Lord. I love the Lord, and I love following him. I love his ways. I love his word, and I'm so grateful and excited to continue down this Christian walk. So all that to say, and I just remember posting that on Instagram. I was like, I feel stronger in my faith, having gone through something that I still don't really understand.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's a cool place to come out of. And yeah, I mean, I think I agree. Like, I think in a different way, I've been like, wow, Lord, like, I've just been amazed at how much I've gone through and like gotten through, and like been so awakened to it's not my strength but his, and like how I could not I could not have done any of what I did in bringing this little man into the world without the strength of the Lord and the peace that he brings and the joy that he brings, and just like I couldn't have done any of that on my own. And that's not a demeaning or depleting thing. It's actually a very beautiful thing to be like, the God of the universe gave me the strength to get through this.
And I was saying this to a patron encouragement video that I made last week, but it's just the truth. Paul says, when we were in the province of Asia, we experienced such intense persecution that we despaired of life itself. But you kind of allowed this to happen, God, to show us my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. When I am weak, when you are weak, then I am strong. Then I truly get to be strong. And so it's not like we're just the weakest ever and we're going around so weak all the time, even though in the grand scheme of things we are weak, but we're also like strong in the Lord, and we're maturing and growing and getting stronger daily. But sometimes he does allow situations to be so intense and bleak and trying that we have no place but to just be on our faces saying, Lord, I am weak, but now I can tap into your strength. I have released. There's nothing else I can do. I'm just so depleted, but now it's your strength that is allowing us to continue on.
Amen to that. So that's the story of our worst day of our life and our best day of our life. Oh man, guys, what a time. What a time. But we got our little man out of it, and he's here and he's great.
Morgan, it feels like all of that happened months and months ago.
I know.
Like a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, he's actually just like
it was just 5 weeks.
Yeah, a month and 1 week old. Dude, what is up?
Can you believe that we went up through all of that?
For you?
All I can say is we fought for this little boy to get him here through conception to delivery. We fought for him.
Yep.
He is a fought for little bubs.
Stay encouraged, you guys. Seek me and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart and when you seek me with a pure heart. So, no matter what you're going through, seek him. Don't despair.
Yeah.
He is the truth.
Amen.
Amen. Bless you.
Zoom into this finger grab. It's got iron grip. It's Luca Iron Gripologus.
Oh yeah, he's a strong boy.
Guys, comment below if you're happy that Luca made it into this world.
And mothers, share any experiences that you have. Let's just
Yeah.
keep the encouragement going in there.
Give this video a thumbs up.
Oh.
Alright, love you guys so much. We'll see you soon. Bye.